So welcome to Surviving and Thriving in Uncertain Times, 9 Keys to Success webinar. So just in case you didn't pick up earlier, the email with the assessment worksheet, I've just put those downloads into the links with the chat. That's an assessment worksheet we'll be using in the webinar. There's a PDF version and a Word document version. If you don't have a printer nearby and want to use it on screen, you can also use a notepad or whatever. So I know your time is precious and I want to offer as much value as I can, so I'm going to jump right ahead and get started. So by the way, I do want to encourage, as we go through the material, to post questions in Q&A or comments in chat, and I'll spend about 45 minutes talking through the material I've prepared, and then we'll spend the remainder of the time answering what questions I can. So who am I? Well, I'm the founder and principal coach at Summit Scale Coaching. I coach small businesses across the world, typically in the $500,000 to 10 million space, dramatically grow their profits year on year and build effective teams to help run their businesses and get time back for themselves. I've coached in a wide range of sectors, including, amongst others, agriculture, arts, healthcare, energy, professional services, real estate, construction, technology, and manufacturing. Formerly, I was the CEO of a group of 7 small to mid-sized companies and managed the combined revenue growth of 300% in a single year, and ultimately sold 2 of those companies for multi-million sums. And prior to that, I was the MD of a hyper-growth business unit that grew 2,000% in 8 years from SME to FTSE 250 business. And in that time, managed a team of 1,000 people operating in 23 cities. And fortunately, married to my wife Claire when raising 2 teenage children and 1 chocolate Labrador. And if you're curious about the accent, being a Kiwi, I love my rugby and cricket. So clients come to me for support and guidance when they're really in one of 3 situations. They're planning to grow or become unstuck or get out of a rut. They need help creating, implementing plans, getting bigger and better clients and projects, and building a team and transitioning from a small to medium-sized business. Or they're managing rapid growth. They want help taming the chaos, creating systems and organizing and delegating, building teams, managing cash flow, freeing up the owner's time. Or they're preparing for sale sometime in the future. They want to get help increasing the value of their business, developing systems and documentation to make it more attractive to a buyer, and setting it up to run without you. So here's a few examples of people I work with. Don't worry too much about the comments in the middle. They're just there so you can see that's just not my mum saying nice things about me. But I invite you to visit my website and check out some of what people are saying. Many of them are just people like you, I would think. Gavin's a service department specialist based in London, catering to the corporate travel market. John provides specialist high voltage components to electricity substations and infrastructure. Petra and Ella, Sisters Grimm, their theatrical dance production company with a Grammy nominated show. Rob at Dr. Bronner's, organic healthcare products. So traditional sorts of bricks and mortars, but often some ethical and cultural and quirky businesses as well. And also in different parts of the world. They've come from a wide variety of businesses and varying stages in development of their business. Arye and its disruptive technology. So you can see, there's a wide variety of industry sectors and varying stages in the development of their business. And throughout my 30-year business career, I've survived 3 major economic recessions, 1992 when there was extremely high interest rates responding to inflation, recession of 2001 when 9/11 burst the tech bubble of the 90s, and then the Great Recession of 2008 when the subprime mortgage crisis infiltrated the British banking sector. And so here's the thing, we find ourselves on the cusp, and what I mean by a cusp is since mid-March when the reality of COVID struck, then the shock and awe, if you like, was the first month of that, and then what's been happening, we've been reeling a little bit, and then now we're in kind of this bubble phase where it feels like if you're in the events business, the travel business, the restaurant business, hospitality, you're being directly affected, but the rest of us are less affected financially at the moment, yet our lifestyles are disrupted. But we're on this cusp, and what I mean by this, somewhere over the next year, we're going to pay the consequence of all this disruption, and that's happening to our economy. And So some reports, depending on where you go and who you look at for this kind of thing, say that this could be as much as 2023 before we get to a place where we have a version of normal again. And lately I've been frequently referencing the well-known Warren Buffett quote, "Only when the tide goes out do we discover who's been swimming naked." So, but what does that really mean? There's lots of businesses ride on, what I call an artificial bubble. So when everything's moving along as usual, the economy is performing, businesses are fat and happy, and things are great. And these times it can be difficult to determine which businesses and which leaders are poised and able to sustain themselves through more challenging times. And when we look at this quote, Warren Buffett's tide going out refers to a stress test which we're all facing this year. Businesses couldn't have predicted that a pandemic would sweep over the globe, shutting doors and practically dragging the economy down. We're familiar with to a grinding halt. So who is swimming naked, so to speak? Businesses who are not prepared to survive such a stress test. The ability to adapt and carve out space for your business to continue throughout this time is proving absolutely key to surviving, let alone having any hope of thriving. And so here's the thing, up until mid-March, life was great. It was like whitewater rafting on a flat river and everything's serene and we're enjoying all what nature has to offer. And then COVID hit and suddenly we find ourselves in turbulent times. And, if you've ever been whitewater rafting or canoeing, it's a bit of a thrill, and as well as scary as it can be, because the forces of Mother Nature and the form of these currents and big rocks that you see in there can be painful. And by the way, that's me at the bottom of this shot on the boat quite a few years ago, going down at the river. So you don't want to be tipped out and hit those rocks, because even if the current is not too fast, the weight of the water behind you will put a massive egg on your knee. And I tell you, I've lived through that experience. So let's avoid those. They hurt. And so we're living in this new normal. It's everybody, I suppose everyone else is tired of that new phrase, the new normal, but whatever normal was in March is certainly gone. And we're now living through a time of rapid change and a time of uncertainty, living a roller coaster is the metaphor that would have it. And so in these times, what we tend to do is freeze or become stuck, as because it's scary. But what we do in these times is have to change. But this is the time of being stuck or being frozen is exactly the last thing that we want to have to happen. And so, you need a guide. And here's the thing about getting a whitewater rafting guide. They sit in the back and help you steer the raft. So when me and my friends wanted to learn to whitewater raft, we got ourselves a guide. This guy was in the back of the boat yelling at us to make sure that we both stayed upright and were taking the right path through the rapids and through the rocks. And so what does it look like to navigate whitewater in business? Well, let me tell you a couple of client stories. There's the client who owns a training and development business. They use actors and drama-based techniques to deliver training solutions, specialists in live learning. And at the time of COVID, obviously they could no longer practice in person because of social distancing. And within the space of about 2 weeks had gone from doing it face-to-face, delivering it virtually and on live via Zoom and similar platforms. So one of the hallmarks of our current times is we have to figure out how to navigate in turbulent times and find a way to deliver the services we have and serve our clients so that they are getting what they need. Let me just stop my video there to save a little bit of bandwidth at the moment. One of the case of, or in the case of another client, organic personal care products, their organic hand sanitizer product is up 900% in response to consumers buying more hygiene products during the pandemic, despite a supply chain bottleneck with getting enough bottles at the start and now trying to source enough organic alcohol to produce the stuff. But through the first 3 months of 2020, this business hand sanitizer sales have outplaced their 2019's total sales by 25%. Or in the case of the electrical contractor who was furloughing people left, right, and centre at the start, but was able to do at the same time to negotiate contracts with entirely new markets and, in fact, got themselves back into business. And so the people that succeed in this kind of environment recognise that in crisis, there's an opportunity, and that crisis requires action, and you can't sit on the sidelines and hope that it's going to fix itself or that's going to go away. Crisis requires the exact opposite of a natural instinct, and that's the lizard part of the brain, the most primitive part of our brain. If you've ever seen animals in the wild, what do they do when they're being attacked is that they freeze and they come to an absolute standstill, and that's what the most primitive part of the brain is telling us to do, because when you freeze, it feels like we're no longer vulnerable to the threat, to that saber-toothed tiger that may be about to attack us. And so the instinct is to freeze, yet the best possible thing is to take action. And we've all heard it before, and it rings true for businesses more than ever. For a business to survive an economic crisis like the one we're facing today, it needs to be able to find a space in which it can pivot or adapt. As a business owner, you need to be innovative in reading the marketplace, assessing what is needed, and finding a way to adapt your business to suit those new needs. And how do you ensure that your business survives? Well, in short, you change your focus. 7 months ago, business owners were thinking about strategic plans, business plans, long-term marketing plans, and what the rest of the year was going to look like. And given that the world was relatively stable and buoyant times, business owners had no real reason to expect that business was going to be anything but good for the remainder of the year. Then came the middle of March, where business owners had to suddenly shift from focusing on big picture strategies to short-term tactics. And the most important tactic, really was quite simple: to survive. What do you need in order to survive? It was cash. And how often do you go about your day thinking about the oxygen you breathe? Probably not very often, ever. The same is true for cash. Cash isn't something that many think about on a daily basis until they need it. And of course, part of being a good business owner is having a handle on your cash flow and knowing, what you have to work with, but it's not a not constant nagging thought until you don't have enough. And it's not, I'm not talking about profitability, as you can have a business has a fine profit and loss statement, but you may not have cash on hand. So here's some things to keep in mind when you're trying to become more cash rich. How do you send out and collect invoices more efficiently? Are there any suppliers, partners, or vendors that you can begin to pay slow? What expenses can you cut? Think about the things like staff parties, bonuses, overtime pay, all of that stuff. And before you invest in anything, really think about the return on investment you can expect to get. So here's the thing: if the owner wants a better business, first, the business needs a better owner. And I'm going to talk to you, a bunch of you on this call, and the statement may sting a little, and I'm sorry if it does, but here's the thing: if the owner wants a better business, first the business needs a better owner. Or as Jim Rohn puts it, don't wish that it was easier, wish you were better. Don't wish for less problems, wish for more skills. Don't wish for less challenge, wish for more freedom, which is about a direct way of saying embrace an open mindset. So our agenda today is we're going to talk about the 5 steps to freedom. That's the model, the framework that I use to help business owners, just like you, work through growing their businesses from wherever you are today to ultimately the stage of where you have time and money freedom. And that's what the 5 steps to freedom refers to. And that's the time and money freedom means that you're free to spend your time as you wish, and you have the money available to do that. And that's what it means, that if you're could be starting another business or spending time on the beach, traveling the world, or going sailing, that's the freedom you get to make that choice. Then we're going to talk about these 9 critical areas of a business so that you can see where you might like to focus on. You have a worksheet that we're going to work through so that you can do a self-assessment. And after all that, it feels like some assistance or help, and we can talk through about coaching, how coaching works, and you can decide if you want to organize an introductory call. As again, I said, do encourage you to pop questions in the Q&A or comments in the chat. So the 5 steps to freedom is an organized way, a framework of how we get from where you're in business today to where ultimately you might want to get as a business owner. It works through each of these 5 stages. So let me break it down. The first step we call creation. At creation step, or the pre-revenue stage, you're unknown in the marketplace, you're researching a viable niche, and you're trying to figure out what kind of business model will work in the market and what's your minimum viable product to launch. And some businesses have found themselves back here and trying to pivot or adapt in this new economy. And once you've launched, you've rolled that out, we head into what's called the chaos phase. At this step, you're trying to understand how the market is responding to your product or service, investing in developing and sales and marketing systems that work for you, recruiting and starting to build a team. You'll probably feel a little bit like feast of famine. Things are good, you're happy, you get busy delivering, and then boom, you're suddenly out of prospects. And so many challenges that we face when we're taking a business through the chaos step. But when we make it, we come to this third step, which we call control. And at the control stage is where you're beginning to get your head above water. You'll be starting to feel a bit more comfortable. You're able to convert cash flow into profit, and that's beginning to stabilize your organization. It's the stage where you feel like you're getting control, not super profitable, but at least now the turbulence is not scaring you and you're able to navigate your way through. And the whole focus of the control step is to begin to organize, begin to measure the fine points, the KPIs in your business, and begin to make adjustments to the business model. And then at the prosperity stage, this is where you're profitable. This is where you have plans and systems in place. You have a competent team. You feel like you're in charge and control. You even get to take some time off and enjoy a life outside of work, and you can plan a month down the track and know that you reasonably can expect to take a holiday. And lots of business owners are happy to stay at this stage indefinitely, that they have this entity, it's spitting out profit, but it still requires them more or less their day-to-day involvement. And if you were to leave for a month or so, the business might not thrive. But as long as you're there day-to-day, things are going great. And that's ultimately what stage 5 is. This is the stage where you can effectively reproduce yourself and develop strong leaders, continue to grow through partnerships and joint ventures and acquisitions, and other people are busy growing their business. You have free time and free cash flow. You have options on which to decide your future. Keep it and run it passively, retire, sell, pursue other interests. And the challenges of most business owners that I work with around time, team, and money. So time issues, you're saying things like this to yourself: I've got too much to do and not enough time to do it, or I can't get everything done, or if I don't do it, it won't get done, or I feel like I'm just constantly putting out fires, or I feel like a pinball and just bouncing around all over the place and really without any really guidance. And if you're feeling stressed out around time, I had one client who was working 70 hours a week, and in fact was sleeping in the office as much as 2 or 3 nights a week. And the client's wife said to him at one stage, "Your business is your mistress, and if you don't do something about it, I will." And that was his kind of wake-up call that things had to change. And then team issues. This is about hiring the right team, getting the culture you want, getting the team focused on the priorities of the business, getting whatever you need done at the level you need. And here's the kind of push the needle kind of question. If you were to start your business again today, how many of your current team would you rehire? So if you had a team of 10 and the answer you gave yourself was 2, well, then you've got team issues and you might want to think about what you got to do with your team. So at any given time on a scale of 1 to 10, you'd be happy to keep at least 8 of them. So you're at that sort of level. And then money. Money is an issue where there are usually 2 dimensions to this. One dimension is about being in control, having the necessary information, a dashboard, accounting, financials, reporting, KPIs in place. So at any given time, you can be in the pilot seat and there's a dashboard in place that gives you enough information that you know how well the business is operating, and is it obvious what you need to correct or work on before it becomes an issue. And of course, the other side of the money is more common, is I need more money, I need better sales and marketing. So I'm going to walk you through 9 of these important assessment areas, and each stage I'm going to give you a bit of description, give you some background context of what they are, and then I'll outline a framework on a scale of 1 to 5, and you get an opportunity then to evaluate if you're closer to a 1 or closer to a 5, or however you might like to rate yourself. And it's a self-assessment, so it's as good as what you desire to get out of it. So the more honest you can be, the more you'll get out of it. So I can tell you that you might find yourselves, as I have with clients, that they've reported back on all 9, and it's a 1 out of 5 on most, and a bit tough to swallow. So my purpose here isn't to make this difficult or embarrassing, rather just to simply give you some insight to where the opportunities are, shed some light on what might be the priorities to work on for you. And the other thing you might want to find is that your perspective on this, and mine might be different. So what you might think of as having control around time might be different than mine. And so we'll address the size of that gap. And the gap between how you think about it and how I think about it might provide some insight for you. So let's get started with time management. So Stephen Covey has a wonderful 2x2 matrix here, and the upper left quadrant is urgent and important. And these are the major to-dos that you have every day and fill up the bulk of your time. On the other side of not urgent and important is all the stuff that tends to be pushed off, but really is your North Star, really about purpose and values of your business and what you do. It's about what we want our life to add up to. And Covey talks about an exercise where you imagine for a minute that you're writing your eulogy. Some people think that's kind of a macabre exercise, but the purpose of it is to think about what would you like your life to add up to. And doing that, invariably a question will come to you. I expect that my eulogy, someone near and dear to me is going to say something nice and wonderful things about who I was and the contribution that I made and the impact I had. And that then begs the question, what am I going to do today in order to be on track for that? And so when you have the answer to those kind of questions, and then you ask yourself, how do I use my time in some way that allows me to get there? And because typically what happens is we're more caught up in the urgent and not important, which is a lot of stuff, that grind of the mill, the crap we do every day. And yet, if you were to compare the stuff in quadrant 3 to quadrant 2, there's no doubt whatsoever, about which is the 2 is more important. And yet the stuff that is in quadrant 3 is always more pressing. It will consume all of the time that you make available to it. And then we've got quadrant 4, all the busy work, all the lots of days, the pings, the rings, the dings on the phone that tell you that you have another email, or tell you somebody on Facebook has a new puppy photo for you to look at. So that's a bit of what time management is. So let me ask you to think about 5. You have a default calendar. You and if that word makes you think, what's a default calendar or default diary? What is time blocking? Then by definition, you're closer to a 1 than 5. So in this case of 5, you're a master of your own time. You take time each week to review and set priorities and block out time in your calendar to get them done. You delegate tasks to free up your time to focus on the important work that only you can do. You work productively through the week, completing important projects and working reasonable hours. And at the other end of the scale, you seem to have not enough time. You're primarily working reactively, dealing with urgent issues as they come up to you, using email to manage your day. You find yourself putting off important projects because there's always another fire to put out, or you often work late or on weekends to try and catch up. So let me ask you, on the scale of 1 to 5 in that box number 1 on our little pictogram, are you closer to a 1 or closer to a 5, or does it feel like somewhere in between a 2, 3, or 4? So just give you a few seconds to figure that out. I take a sip of my drink. So if you have a default calendar and stick to it and work to it, then congratulations. That by definition makes you closer to a 5. If you don't have a default calendar, then I'm almost certain you're closer to a 1. So here's a framework for you. Systems run the business, people run the systems, and you lead the people. That's right out of the textbook of the E-Myth. Systems run your business. 85% of what happens in your business should be done by systems. And people run those systems, and you lead your people. So, well, let me reframe the question another way. How do they get those fries and those burger franchises to taste so good? Whenever they're made in London, New York, Hong Kong, Moscow, or in your home city, those fries are made by a 16-year-old whose parents can't get him or her to clean up their own bedroom. So how do they do that? Well, they have great systems. They say, here's a step-by-step process to how we make our fries. Here's the recipe. Here's step number 1. Here's step number 2. Because if on the other hand, you had people figuring out that every day, every fry, every shift would have a different color, different quality and quantity of fries in those boxes. So 85% what happens in a business ought to be routine, or put in a different way, systemize the routine, humanize the exceptions. In other words, about 15% of the businesses that is well systemized is stuff that didn't go the way the system said, and that gets brought up to the owner in a way that allows the owner to direct the system to get a better outcome. Or put that a different way, anytime a person or a problem occurs in your business, what you should be asking yourself is, what would the system have to look like so this problem couldn't occur again? But how often the business owners often respond to say, well, who screwed up, or what do I have to do with that person to fix this? No, create a system solution, not a people solution. So let's talk about valuing yourself. A 5 looks like you have a system for everything. You have a standard operating procedure. It's documented somewhere. It's updated every 3 months, and there's even a routine for a way that the systems are updated. And the updating of the systems is done by the affected people, so they're self-educating along the way. At the other end, everything's ad hoc. You're doing things ad hoc. You have no standardized processes and manuals. You're often the bottleneck, the hub and spoke model, needing to make decisions and tell your employees exactly what to do. Nothing gets done unless somebody comes in and asks you a question. You know the name of every one of your customers. If a supplier has a problem, you're the one they phone. If you're the hub in the business and you don't have a system and you have a hub and spoke problem, that's probably got you working evenings and weekends. So systems run your business, people run your systems, and you lead your people. So give me a quick score, somewhere closer to 1 or somewhere closer to 5 on that one. So then delegation skills, when speaking to most business owners, what they think of as delegation, I would describe as abdication. And that sounds like here you go get this done. And then when you go to take a look at what's been done, you're upset because it wasn't done anywhere near where you expected. So here's the thing about delegation. There's actually a 9-step process for proper delegation, which includes describing your expectations, describing the feedback, describing the support you're going to give or get, describing the resources available, including maybe budget, describing the level of authority that they have. Every job has 10 shades of grey in terms of your expectations. On one hand, the shade of grey is to do this exactly the way I want you to do it, at least at level 5, a midpoint, go something like, go and find out what is needed and come back with me some recommendations. And at level 10, this is your area of responsibility. You're free to do with it as you wish because you're totally in control. And the thing is that this is often confused as well. You might have somebody working for you. For some parts of their job, they are at a level 10, but on one part of their job, they're at a level 3 because they're brand new at it, or that aspect, and they're not very good at it. So that often causes a bit of confusion as well, because Johnny thinks I'm at level 5 at everything and you're upset at the one thing. So delegation almost as a general means that you're improving the system you use to delegate. And there is actually a system for delegation, a way of delegating authority. And if you don't have that system or aren't even aware of that, then you could be at a system that you're closer to a 1. And that, again, is another hallmark of being a hub and spoke manager. You're the bottleneck in your business. Everything needs to come through you. You resist delegating because no one can do it as well as you can, or because you believe it will take longer to train someone to do it. It would take, it would be faster to just do it yourself. On the other hand, you constantly evaluate your own schedule to locate, tasks you can delegate. You delegate appropriately based on your employee's level of competency for that specific task. Who else could do this has become your kind of guiding question. And the question you want to be asking yourself is, where in the business am I generating the most value in the business, and what would I have to do in order to do more of that? How do I find others who can do the work that I should be doing? What should I be doing more of, which in turn means what should I be doing less of? If we were to work together, one of the things we do is a value fund matrix, and that'll help you identify 5 to 7 hours of work that others would happily do, in some cases even better than you can do it. So just mark yourself on that. And then to grow your business, here's the thing: you need the right people doing the right things right. Hiring and training, you need the right people doing the right things right. And one of the hallmarks of lots of small business owners is that when it comes to hiring and training, they're going to, it sits on the side of this. And what I mean by that, something occurs, you have an opening, and now the side of your desk, you throw another job, a jobs board ad, and the whole thing is just a pain in the backside because it's getting in the way of everything that you're really wanting to doing in the business. And so if you have a system, if you can assume for a minute that you've got a system for acquiring customers, then you also have to have a system for acquiring and training your next superstars, those who your next superstars are before you need it. So let me give you an example. I had a client who had 2 physiotherapy clinics, and there were hundreds of vacancies nationally for physiotherapy. There was a massive shortage, and so what they learned to do is have a recruiting and attraction program going 365 days a year. And one of the 2 partners was responsible for generating and operating that system. And in fact, in their case, they'd hire and make promises out to people as much as 12 months out. And they didn't hire or advertise on the basis of, hey, we want a physiotherapist, because there's no USP in that. There's nothing unique about that. There's no reason anybody would stand out for them. So as they happened, they were in a part of the country where physiotherapist makes more than probably about half of what the fee is charged, and so they make about the same regardless of where they are in the country. And so if you're in central London, you're living on about the same amount of revenue as the physiotherapist who's living in a more rural or less expensive part of the country. So what did they do? And they said, hey, do you want to get out of Central City flat and get into a 2-story executive home? We can do that for you because you can afford that you can't afford that when you're living in Central City flat. But hey, do you like hiking or fishing or whatever? Great, we can do that. Do you like rock climbing or mountain biking? Great, we can also combine that with with a barbecue at the end of the day. So they created a really compelling way of life, a USP, to always have a stream of candidates coming through the door that the person they were hiring a year down the track that they had no idea who that person will replace. They just knew that they were going to be replacing someone. And so the worst thing they wanted to do was be in a place where they were stuck. Someone may have left for a good reason, had a good reason for leaving, and now they're behind the 8 ball and have patients going elsewhere. So if you don't have a clear process, you're often hiring in a rush, you're doing it on the side of your desk, job descriptions are fuzzy, you don't have training manuals, turnover is high, you're at a 1. If you have processes for attracting and finding and onboarding new talent, you're making good hiring decisions, your key employees are well trained, happy and loyal, you have clear job descriptions and employee manuals. In fact, you don't even know where they are and you can put your hands on it, you're at a 5. So I'll give you a second to evaluate yourself on that, and that's in the bottom left-hand corner of the worksheet. And then communication. So do you have a regular system for team meeting communication? Do you have a business or strategic plan for your business, even a 2-person, 3-person, 5-person business? What's the purpose of a strategic plan? Well, most people think the purpose of a strategic plan is to outline the future, to have a series of goals, to know what the business is going to look like. But in fact, 5% of the purpose of a strategic plan is that vision stuff. 95% of it is to make sure everyone's on the same page. We're talking about alignment. The hardest part of getting everybody to work together is to get everyone on the same page. And the mechanism, the system that we pack around that is the team meeting rhythm. And what that means is that you have daily huddles, weekly line meetings, monthly meetings, quarterly meetings, annual meetings. And if you're saying to yourself, why in the hell would I want to do that? You're probably at the same time don't like you're doing your training and hiring trust system, and you answer the question of how many people would you like to rehire is probably not that one that you want to have. So if there's no rhythm of regular scheduled team meetings, communications is inconsistent, inefficient, people are confused or misinformed, you're at the 1. If you've got a rhythm of team meetings where you've established quarterly reporting and feedback, accountability on an annual, quarterly, weekly and daily basis, everyone's on the same page, you're a 5. So I'll just give you a moment to make a note there in box number 5 in the upper right corner there. So let's move on. So money. So we talked about time, team, and money. And one aspect of money is having a dashboard, having an accounting platform in place, getting regular reporting on your bookkeeping, having your quick ratio evaluated every week. A quick ratio, by the way, is an accounting term that basically says how prepared is the business to pay its bills. And a quick ratio could be expressed as all the money you have in the bank divided by all the bills that you have and payable. And so if you had a quick ratio of 1.5, you'd have £1.5 for every pound or dollar, a pound or you owe. And if that went from 1.5 and the next week's 1.1 and the next week's 0.9, your trajectory is not very good, and you're upside down if you don't have something like a quick ratio, or just a simple example of one of the KPIs you want to have in place. Then you're sailing in the fog and you're about to hit some rocks and don't even know it. And one of my clients I worked with is a PhD, a brilliant guy. Yet he had no idea how to read the financials because there was no class in his university course. And clients I've had for several years, they've had said that they've trained in their specialist area, but never had any more than an hour in business training in that time. So here's the thing: you're great at your craft, you're probably great as a professional advisor or running your company or something, but nobody's teaching this stuff, and you need a business education the second you become a business owner. So your financial health, if you're on the end of getting your accountant to give you a year-end report and you have no idea what it means and you file it away and you've never really looked at it, all of them are stacked up in the drawer. That's a 1. On the other end, if you have a dashboard in place and you can be the pilot at the aircraft, and every important KPI, every important detail of the health and well-being of the aircraft is available to you on the dashboard, then you have your business in a place where you can have that 1-hour meeting call with a manager or whatever and together know how to evaluate what's working and what's not working. And then the other dimension of money is, do you have money systems in place? Do you have revenue and profit plan? Do you have a tactical marketing plan? Do you know a year out what you expect the business as you move towards where you are today and how you expect the business to be? So take this analogy. Would you get on a plane if you knew the pilot didn't have a navigation plan? Would you do that? Of course you wouldn't. It'd be nuts. So are you operating your business without a navigation plan of how your business is going to grow and evolve over the next 12 months from a financial perspective? Do you have a revenue and profit budget, number 1? And then do you have a tactical marketing plan that supports that plan? If you have a revenue forecast, that's awesome. If you don't have a tactical marketing plan, then your revenue and profit plan is basically based on hot air because there's nothing underneath it to support the growth that you're expecting. So if you're making decisions based on your bank balance, running into cash flow crunches, that's a 1. If you have a current business plan, a break-even plan, a budget and cash flow, and you use these proactively to make decisions in advance, then you're at a 5. So let's look at another aspect of money, sales and marketing. So let me break down something here. Let me give you an example of a thing called the profit equation. And so every business has typically the same levers, and you can see that they're printed here in blue. So in this case, we have a 5-lever model. I'm going to walk you through it. So in this case, there's 1,000 leads that this business generates. The conversion rate was 25%. So out of every 100, 25 become clients. So they now have a total of 250. And from the previous year, they're able to retain 250. So it has now 500 customers in total. And so now the business is doing about £1,500 per customer then. So maybe it's, it could be a garage repairs workshop, a coffee shop, and it's £1,500 worth of revenues. Or maybe it could be a painting company and it's 1 transaction a year. The model changes, but we're just using an example. So this business's total revenue is 750,000. And out of every £100, £42 was your gross profit. So that means £58 went to pay to produce the item or to do the painting or whatever, purchase the raw materials. And so the gross margin in this business is 42%, and that leaves a gross profit of 315,000. And the fixed costs, the rent, the phone bill, the vehicles, all that stuff added up to 180,000. So the net profit of the business was 135,000. So question number 1 is, do you know your own KPIs? Do you know these numbers in your business? My experience is that, probably not 1 in 10 actually knows the answer to this question. And if you don't, you can't do what I'm going to demonstrate next. So look what happens when we take each of these levers by just a minuscule 10%. We're going to adjust or otherwise do some things to make a difference by 10%. So leads go up to 1,100 and conversion is now 27.5. That's rounded up to 28 on here. And there's now 303 new customers. So customers grew by 21%. And you can see, well, how did that happen? I just increased 2 indicators by 10%. Well, that's what compounding does. That's what leverage does. So we did some things to improve our client retention by 10%. So now we have 578 clients, and we did some things to grow our revenue per customer by 10%. So now there's £1,650. So wow, look at that. We've just added 27% to the revenue line, and we're going to improve our gross margins. And so now the gross profit is 440,000, and we've now grown it by 40%. And we haven't done anything yet with our fixed costs. But look what happened. We grew the profits by 125,000, which is 93% over what you had before. So the first thing is, if you don't know these numbers, you can't do what I've just described because you don't have the platform to improve. And then you're wondering, where am I going to find the ideas to generate the 10% for each of these items? Well, here's the shopping list or the menu, and you'll see there are some in columns. There are 7 lever points that you have, and you're looking at the list and thinking, well, 80% of these are rubbish. They're rubbish for my business. They're not applicable to me. But here's the thing: 6 to 10 of them is where your gold is. That's where the 10% is, and that the work is what we do together to figure out which of these 6 to 10 are for your business. And when we do that, you'll enjoy and reap the benefits of extra 10%. So let me ask you, do you have these numbers in your business? If so, great. If you don't, let's start getting them and let's start building the sales and marketing platform for your business. So if you're feast and famine, that's a 1. If you have a clear USP, you have a revenue and profit plan, you know your profit equation numbers, you're a 5. Okay, one more to go, everyone. So this is the ability to innovate and adapt. And no time like the present that has become more important for us to understand what's happening in the marketplace, where we need to adjust. And the most important part of this is you need to have some thinking time. If you're running around like the pinball, you don't have thinking time because that's the kind of time, we're not conscious. So one of my mentors has a red leather chair in his office. He has a space 2 hours a week where he sits down in that chair. He only uses it for this purpose. There's no other reason he gets into that chair. He sits down with an A4 pad and pen, sits down with a question like, what do I need to be doing less of so someone else could be doing more of it? Or a question, what business am I really in? Now, he has a bunch of businesses, but one of the businesses he owns is a car wash. And so the answer he comes up to this, to this thing about what business am I really in. So have you ever noticed when you get your car washed that the rest of the day is better? The day is sunny, you feel better. You just feel better when your car's been washed. So when he came to understand that the real business where he was in is with his car wash was making people feel better about the day. So he says, well, I understand my customers want to get the mud off their bodywork when they come in, but his entire business is to make people feel good. And to give you into some insight on that, the average car wash is about £14 in the UK. And in his case, it's about £46 revenue taken. That was the value to him for the 2 hours of thinking about to come up with the answer. What business am I really in? And if I'm really in that business, how would I design my business? So everything in that business was to help a person feel better about themselves. So quick example, the people who operate the machines, it kind of, they have kind of a keypad. He actually has a person, they have a battery operated device in their hand, and they plug in your registration number and they say, hey, Sam, I see it's been a month since the last time you were in. It's been spring, so you probably need to think about spring clean this car. Let's do the Super Deluxe wash today. Do you agree? So they have Sam's name and info. They're actually a salesperson, really on commission, by the way. And so that person greets you by their name. They'll give you a cup of coffee and they'll take you into the building. They don't leave you to stay in the car because they want an opportunity to sell you some new floor mats or a boot liner or the like, by the way. So that kind of thinking, that kind of things you put in place when you recognize your job is to make people's day because of the experience, because of a better experience. And that's what happens when you have the ability to innovate and adapt. So if you have no thinking time, you don't have time to think and reflect on, you're just on reacting to the load, that's a 1. And if you're at a level 5, you've got active space in your time, you've built in windows for how to think about, you're in your marketplace, how you wish to grow and adapt, and things come to you less by surprise and more because you've got things on your radar. That's helping you anticipate what the changes that are going to occur. So there you are. I've walked you through all 9. So what does that kind of look like for you? Anyone have a 5 across the board? I'd be delighted. I'd be shocked. Anyone 1s across the board? It wouldn't surprise me at the least. But if you have some kind of jumble of 2s and 3s and the odd 4, you're doing better than most of the clients I work with. Honest to goodness, you're doing better than most. What would it like? What would it be like if you could walk through the 5 steps pro and get to a place where you could report 5s? What would it be like to spend more time on your favorite hobby or exercise, at least get home 7 nights a week to go to sleep in your own bed? And so the great news is these are all learnable skills in some way. As you learn to become, whatever you do, electrician, physiotherapist, whatever, or learn to learn to do whatever you do in your business, owning a business, those skills are all teachable and learnable. And there's a big payback. There's a big reward for you if you do. And, business coaching can help. I'm in the business of help. I'm not in the business of helping you become a better lawyer, but I'm in the business of helping you have a lot better law practice. And we work through these 21 silver bullets. Each of these are component parts of the 5 steps. These are proven tools that need to be implemented into the business to get you through that 5 steps to freedom. And as we work through the 5 steps, by the way, one of the counterintuitive things that happens in a time of crisis, often businesses that are operating at a level 4 in a time of crisis lurch backwards. And so sometimes we even go back as far as, seen in some cases, they even have to pivot the business, and they're back at level 1, trying to figure out how to make lemonade out of lemons. So Petra and Ella, they were one of my first ever clients. When I met Petra and Ella, they had been in business 8 years and were doing around 250,000, 300,000 revenue. They were a theatrical dance production company based in London. Last year, 2 years later, they did 1.25 million in revenue. They had a successful run in the West End with a production in the spring, a performance in Marina Sands Bay in Singapore. They went to Hampton Court in the summer. They did October on World Ballet Day. They showed at the Royal Albert Hall, and they finished the year in December with a 4-month city tour of China. And there are secured contracts for this year. They've been pushed out to next year because of COVID, but we were also celebrating in the middle of COVID lockdown when they won a contract to run a major events in the Middle East next year. So as one of my first ever clients, they've learned the power of the profit equation, which was what we were talking about, the compounding effect of calculating leads, conversions, etc. And, I knew nothing about the arts and entertainment industry, but I do know, how to help them grow a healthy, profitable business. So what you get from coaching, firstly, you get awareness, generally in the form of perspective, feedback, and insight. It's not my job to run your business. It's your business. You get to run it the way you want, but I'm going to help you by acting as your guide, by helping you figure out what are your options, what are some of the alternatives you hadn't thought about before, help you have a voice. One of my clients, and I was working with this guy for about 3 months, and sat down one day and I said, hey, what do you like best about the coaching? And he said, well, it's great to have a friend. I have to say I was a little bit embarrassed. I was like, well, this guy was paying me to have a friend. But what I came to understand is that being an owner is lonely. You're on your own. You can't speak enough. You really speak to your competitors. You can't speak really to anybody in your business. And you go home at night and you're tired and it's hard to engage, anyone with us. And in fact, it becomes it takes 30 minutes to explain the whole thing to anyone else before they're really in a position to understand. So having someone who understands, who gets it, who's been in the trenches is really valuable for a lot of business owners I work with. REA wasn't a typical client. He was a well-funded technology startup and found the observations, the feedback, insightful, useful for the launch of his recruitment platform. So you get education in business building practices. Having a tool bag of best practices, tools, and systems means you don't have to reinvent the wheel. Tried and tested strategies, best practices used by successful business owners around the world to successfully grow their business to a point where they had the free cash and free time to achieve why they went into business in the first place. Gavin, I mentioned earlier, owns a service department agency mainly for corporate travelers. Obviously, he's had a tough time, but what he found was that my kind of leadership experience and the coaching system gave him the capability and the self-belief that he needed to build his business. And you also get accountability to achieve peak performance. No matter how much willpower you have, here's the thing: you don't have enough. And the amount of discipline you have, you don't have enough. And the truth is, I don't have enough either. Willpower is an easily exhausted resource. And so I don't, so I know I have a coach because I know that a coach gets me to do the more stuff than I do on my own. If nothing else, I wake up the day before my coaching call and think, crap, I don't want to be embarrassed. I must get that commitments done that I said I was going to do. So Rob runs organic supplier operations for Dr. Bronner's with operations all over the world, including Africa and Asia. And Shane has a way of helping me think differently. I tell him about things I want to do and why they can't happen. He tells me why they can. He gets me focused on making them happen. So there you go. Put any questions in the next few minutes. You'll have Q&A. I'll just tell you a little about how we can help you, and then we'll go on to the Q&A before. So just if you've got any questions, put them into Q&A. So here's the thing. You're probably in one of three places now. You have everything you need. You're good to go. Life is great. That's autumn. I'm excited for you. Or you might say, hey, Shane, that was valuable, but I have a question or two. And if that's the case, let's book a 15-minute call at timewithshane.com. That'll connect with you with my calendar, and we'll spend 15 minutes to deal with and respond to your question. No obligation. It's just if you want some help, and you're probably thinking to yourself, well, how do I get some of these ones to the fives? And I need some help. And then that's the case. Just go to timewithshane.com and we'll have that 15-minute introductory call. If it feels like a potential fit, we'll go ahead and block out some more time for a 90-minute session where we can explore what's going on for you and your business. Complimentary, of course, and there's no charge for that. Of course, I give a guarantee. My guarantee is that you'll agree after 4 months the coaching is paid for itself, and you even get to define by what measure, by what standard. So if you're thinking coaching is kind of risky, let me take the risk off the table. I know there's no risk. I've worked with many, many clients. Not one of them has actually claimed the guarantee. And here's the deal with that. You have to give me a guarantee as your coach. I'm on the sidelines. You're the owner. You're on the playing field. If you're not showing up on the playing field, I can't help you from the sidelines. So if you agree to complete the work, complete the assignments, the commitments you've agreed to, I'll never tell you to do something. Something you've agreed to do, then I know it's going to pay off. The truth is, coaching really works. So, questions. So, question on the time management one. I find I'm always in the important and urgent mode, always putting fires out. Could you give me a tip here? Yeah, so that's the hamster on the wheel strategy, isn't it? The hamster strategy for getting more done is running faster, and eventually the hamster dies from fatigue. And that's the quadrant, the top of the urgent important in that matrix, when which becomes tyrannical. It's tyranny. It's a relentless. It's demanding. It'll suck up all your time if we let it. So the shift that has to occur is not so much that the stuff that occupies the time, it's the relationship we have with that stuff. It's about your personal relationship with time. If you want to see a shift, then it isn't so much what's in that time, it's how you think about it. And therefore, as a result, you'll be thinking some of the stuff someone else has to be doing, because the stuff in the top right-hand quadrant, the important and not urgent, is the driving seat of achieving your goals, and is more meaningful and more important, is going to lead to a more productive, richer life. And it's a slippery slope, and it accelerates quickly. Many of us, have relationships with, partners, spouses, from time to time, those relations have a reset, and as we evaluate and think about, encourage some things and want to discourage some things that are happening in our relationship. And that's the true in our relationship with others. Why not, the same in our relationship with time? That time has to be our relationship with time has to be reset from time to time. And the two most common strategies that I see people employing that leads to stress is, the first one is the hamster in the wheel, try and run faster. And the one that you just heard, and I've talked about before, is firefighting. We're just putting one fire out after another, whatever comes up next, without rhyme or reason, about whether or not the thing is in fact the best and highest use of our time. And the one definition of insanity is doing the same thing, expecting a different result. So if you like the person who feels that you may take a few minutes a day to survey your time and audit what you're doing with your time, that's the exercise we do with the value fund box. And 9 times out of 10 I've done with clients, it's a really enlightening, eyebrow raising kind of reality check and aha moment for people. There's a question here. Is now really the time to hire a business coach? Well, I suppose in current circumstances, when business is down and business owners are looking to trim expenses, a wise decision and something I'd advise them to do, it might seem appropriate to consider increasing expenditure by hiring a coach. But someone I spoke with recently put it, business coaching is a luxury that most people can't afford right now. Well, when I heard that, it occurred to me that if that's how they're thinking about business coaching, I wonder how many other business owners might be thinking in the same way. And this would be a really good time to make the distinction between expenditure and investment. Lunches, office supplies, carpet cleaning are expenditures. They might be important, but they don't provide a direct financial return. Business coaching is an investment. It's an investment in your future, your business, and your personal life. If you invested 10K in coaching and that produced a 10 times return on your bottom line or improvement in your life, would you make that investment? I bet you would. So I believe so strongly that coaching is an investment that I offer, my clients a guarantee that I talked about, that I guarantee that after 17 weeks or 4 months that you'll agree that the coaching is paid for itself, and if by whatever measure you've set, and if it hasn't, I'll coach you free until it does. So I've worked with many clients, and not one of them has ever asked me to come good on that guarantee. So if you don't want to take my word for it, I invite you to look at some of the results and talk to some of them. And let me kind of ask you the question from another perspective. How much is it costing you by not having a coach? How much money are you leaving on the table? So, right. I think that's covered the questions. Okay, folks, there doesn't appear to be any more questions, and we're coming up to time, so I'm going to wrap it up there. Thanks so much for being on the webinar today. I hope you found this of value. I really hope you enjoyed it. I look forward to talking to you real soon. Bye for now.